If you've been enjoying our podcast as much as we have and hope that we continue past 50 episodes, here's your chance. Here's your chance to help make that happen. By becoming a Patreon subscriber, not only will you help the Little House on the Prairie 50th Anniversary podcast to live on, but you'll also get exclusive content just for you.
Here's what's in store for you. Join monthly Q&A sessions where you can ask us about anything. Whether it's about our work, personal interests, or advice on your own projects, we're here to connect and share.
Enjoy unique content created specifically for Patreon subscribers, including bonus segments from our shows.
You'll have a say in what we create, and you'll have a voice in future content.
Benefit from exclusive discounts on merchandise and entries into special giveaways. It's our way of saying thank you for your support.
Receive personalized shout-outs in videos, podcasts, or social media posts.
Because your support on Patreon allows us to dedicate more resources to creating the content that you love.
You could join the Little House 50th Anniversary podcast community on Patreon and become a Prairie patron for just $5 a month.
The first 50 new members will get autographed pictures of Allison and me, a signed Living on a Prairie card from Pamela,
and signed book plates for all of our books. Yes, for Confessions of a Prairie Bitch and for Prairie Man, My Little House Life and Beyond.
We thank you so much for your continued support, and we cannot wait to share our ongoing journey with you on Patreon. We are extremely grateful for the support of visitsimiValley.com and the city of Simi Valley's belief in Little House on the Prairie and their support of the Little House 50th Anniversary podcast.
Discover the charm of Simi Valley, California, the home of the prairie. Visit Simi Valley, where adventure meets history and the spirit of the prairie comes alive. Explore the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library, step aboard Air Force One, enjoy stunning hikes and savor delicious local cuisine. Whether you're here for a weekend getaway or a family vacation, Simi Valley offers something for everyone and is only 30 minutes from Los Angeles. Plan your visit today and experience the best of Simi Valley. Go to visitsimiValley.com for more details. Your adventure awaits in Simi Valley.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome, bonnet heads. Bonnet heads of all creeds, shapes, and sizes. Welcome. I am Pamela Bob. Who am I? Well, check me out on Living on a Prairie. I'm the writer, creator, and star of it. You know, check it out. I am here with, as always, our beloved Prairie Bitch, Allison Arngrim, and our hashtag imaginary boyfriend. That's right. He's Dean Butler. Hello, you guys. I just had a scary Mercury retrograde computer crash that Dean does not believe in, but I believe in it. It is happening, people. So if I disappear somewhere in the middle of this podcast, that's what's happening.
Well, we'll wait for you if you disappear.
Thanks. I know you don't believe in any of that, but it's fun.
No,
We'll burn some sage in the studio.
Well, thanks.
Well, maybe it is in retrograde. If that, whatever that means, because we had a power failure in the country today, and I'm sitting in our old ranch kitchen, and the power dropped out about 7:15 this morning, and just came back up about 45 minutes ago. So hopefully we will get through this without another Northern California
disaster. Yeah, I'd say that's a little Mercury retrograde. Mr. Butler.
I get it.
Random. Anyway, hi guys. It's so good being with you as always. Allison, you were just in San Francisco. Tell us all about it.
It was great. If you are ever in San Francisco, there's a club called Oasis. Go, 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 go. It's fabulous. I just did my show there. Some of the best tech I've ever had. Those people.
Oh, that's good.
You'd have thought he'd been doing the show every night for weeks before I got there. It was like amazing. It's a really fun place. While I was there, I went, okay, I only have like a day and a half. So off to Chinatown for dim sum breakfast, off to Fisherman's Fisherman's Wharf to hit the Boudin Bakery to get 2 loaves of the sourdough bread, and then over to Ghirardelli Square to get the original hot fudge sundae. So yes, I managed to work all of that in, and then the next day did brunch at Sweet Maples. I don't eat the bacon, but they are famous for their millionaire bacon. So yes, but get the Benedict McCrab. I basically ate my way across San Francisco when I wasn't on stage.
You know what? There are 2 type of travel people. There's one type of travel person that goes because they want to see sights, they want to see certain, things, and then there are other people that they're dictated by food. I'm the food person.
I went to Rose's house. I went to Rose Wilder Lane's house, famous in the book, when The Way West one, when Laura went to Rose's house to go to the Pan Pacific exhibition in 1915, and they saw a Charlie Chaplin movie and she hated it. But that's the house. The house is there, and I did do a Facebook Live from the front doorstep of the house.
That's awesome.
I did the thing.
That's awesome.
Cool.
I just have to ask you if you got to the Buena Vista bar.
I did not.
Which you have to do when you're in San Francisco.
I have to go there. I think they'll have me back. It was a hit at Oasis. Definitely a hit. So.
Oh, well, perfect. There's time for the Buena Vista then. That's
I'm sure they loved you out there. Holy moly.
Oh, my God.
Dean, where are you? Because you're not in the studio. Where are you with that adorable
I'm in your chair.
So I'm about 45 miles south of San Francisco as the crow flies. Can see San Francisco in the haze, 40 miles in the distance. Oh. And this is a place that was founded by my great-great-grandfather in 1885. And it's still in the family. And our guest today has been here more than once. I'm up here for my sister's 64th birthday and for my 50th high school reunion. So it's just trying to fit a lot of stuff in this week.
That's going to be a trip.
Whoa. Have you gone to any of your other reunions?
I have.
Oh, okay.
I have.
Okay.
So, but 50 is sort of like as with the 50th Little House reunion, 50 is significant and a special time. And I think there probably will be people at my 50th high school reunion that I haven't seen in 50 years, just as it was in Simi Valley, where I saw members of our cast that I hadn't seen in 40 years. So it's going to be that kind of a week, I think.
Cool.
Oh my God. And you're like manly back at your you have street cred back in your high school.
Are they impressed? Are they impressed by you with all this?
I don't think so. And I think,
oh, come on.
I think that's all part of the, I'm going to slip. The way it works at reunions, you go right back to where you were. Mm-hmm. I was sort of a low man on the totem pole then. I will be a low man on the totem pole again, I think. But it's always it's always fun to see people after years. And sometimes you sort of grin and bear it. And other times it's like, it's really great to see people. So
yeah. Well, you're being very modest because I'm sure people are like, holy moly, that's all Monzo. I'm sure of it. Okay. Well, yeah. Big happy birthday to your sister, too. That's great.
Oh, yeah.
Nice. You're all together.
Yeah.
Just, side note, we're up on Patreon, folks. Yeah. It's been super fun.
It's happening.
Thank you for those who have joined. We will, for the first 50, be contacting you because we have to mail you some stuff, some swag, some merch.
Yes.
And it's been great. Please join us. Things. And very funnily, the other day we were on a call. We were just testing a video call because we're going to be podcasting while Dean is in Tombstone, Arizona, with a bunch of prairie people. And so we were testing this video and ended up, it was me and you and Jen Brawler, your social media goddess, and Patrick Laverteau. And we were recording and we just decided, hey, this is Patreon, people. So that's ridiculous. So
that piece will show up in our Patreon. It will show up for patrons. And it's sort of fun. And cool. Pat's amazing. And I'm so glad you could show up. It's amazing. As we looked at you in your car, it was a very fuzzy video. It is. Oh yeah. It is pristine downloading.
Great. Well, it worked then. Awesome.
God. Pretty good. Yeah.
It'll be even better next time when I'm actually connected to Wi-Fi. So that's really good to know. All right. Let's get to it. Have we said what we needed to say before we bring on our guest?
Oh, yeah, we got to bring him in. Bring him in.
Okay.
Do it.
We have a really awesome guest today. This man was involved with Little House at the network level and has lots of great insights about the show that he gained on the set, in meetings with Michael Landon, and his dealings at the network. Fascinating.
Yeah. Rick, I'm sorry, I don't want to say his name.
Oh, no.
This is someone I've known for a long time, and he is so knowledgeable, so bright, capable, and as I think you'll all discover, just a really, really good guy. You know, you're gonna like this guy.
Ooh, I can't wait. Yeah. All right, from the studios of UBN Go in Burbank, California, me in New York City, this is Little House 50th Anniversary Podcast. All right, let's get right to it. Let's get to today's special guest.
Yay.
Oh, yeah, but look, before we introduce him, I need to reiterate, this is a really good friend of mine. So no sniping and insults.
Oh, okay, we can't.
Right.
Me? Insulting? Are you? I do that when we stop
mean to the
recording,
guest.
not while we're recording. No.
Well, we're a very affable group. I don't know why I said that, but I said
Never, ever.
Yeah.
Okay. Our guest has been a successful writer, director, producer, showrunner, and executive in the television industry for over 30 years. Most recently, supervising producer for the CBS mystery series Elementary. Good show. He has worked in nearly every genre: drama, documentary, comedy, science fiction, action, adventure, romance, mystery, and horror for the major broadcast networks, cable channels, syndication, and streaming outlets. Holy moly. After graduating cum laude from Yale University, Rick worked as director of current programs at CBS and NBC. That is our Little House connection. Before turning his attention to writing and directing, he was headquartered at Universal for several seasons, winning nominations for both the Emmy Award for Quantum Leap and Edgar Award for Simon and Simon, while running existing series and also creating his own series, Major Dad. Remember Major Dad? I sure do. Yeah. In addition, through his own production company and with his buddy, Mr. Dean Butler, yes, our Dean, he continues ongoing production of documentaries. He's best known for writing, directing, and producing the globe-spanning Back to the Battlefield series, Goin Back, for the Discovery Network, and writing, producing the PBS concert musical Pledge special, Pause Fiddle, Dean's Pause Fiddle, shot in Nashville. He's also made 2 feature-length documentaries for Yale, his alma mater. When Does He Sleep? He and Dean produced multiple hours. I mean, the resume is insane. He and Dean produced multiple hours of DVD bonus content for NBC Home Entertainment and Imavision. Please welcome the devoted Little House fan, Rick Okie. Hi, Rick. My goodness, what an accomplishment.
I'm exhausted just hearing that.
I was like, how is this still going? Yes. Okay, can you start us out by answering this? What are the qualifications to become a network programming executive?
Yes.
You know, that's a great question, and I couldn't tell you what it would take now.
Yeah.
It's a funny story. When I got out of college, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And I went and talked to a psychotherapist who said, go down to the local community college and take the occupational inventory test. They'll test you on what your aptitudes are and what your interests are.
Yeah.
And I scored high in both the arts and communication. And they said, you should be in the film business. I was living in Santa Barbara, California. So I hopped on my motorcycle and drove down to CBS Television City.
Oh my God, I love you already.
I walked into the HR department and I said to the woman who I was talking to that I wanted to work in the program department. And she laughed and said, so do I. That's why I'm working in the HR department. Said, it's a big company. You got to get your foot in the door and then you got to wiggle your way into it. Well, I did. I wiggled my way into it, made friends with people who were leaving to take other jobs and just, slid my way.
So what department did you actually start in? HR?
I started in the story. Oh no, I started in payroll. I was sitting there talking to this woman, And she said, well, we really have nothing for you today. And the phone rang, and it was the manager of the payroll department. He said, I need somebody to file W-4 forms for 1 day.
Unbelievable.
And I had come all this way. And she said, you want to do it? And I said, sure. We got to the end of the day, and he said, you're not finished. You want to come back tomorrow? And I said, sure. And he got to the end of that day, and he said, hey, one of these clerks is just going to go on maternity leave. You want to take her job while she's gone? Yep. And I said, sure. And one thing led to another. So
it's the old work your way up from the mailroom kind of story.
I mean,
like to hear
really
about it.
is. That's incredible.
And the day I walked in there, I was walking around the halls looking for the payroll department, and here comes an elephant walking down the hallway toward me. And I went, I'm in the right place. This is great. They were shooting a Circus of the Stars special upstairs in the studios, and they were taking the elephant to the set. So I went, I like this. This will work.
I love this story. This is life, right? Like, you can't plan these things. It's just it's like the crazy twists and turns and happenstances and that end up, creating an entire life.
Well, what I love about this story, Rick, and it so speaks to who you are insatiably curious about, there is no subject that has ever come up in our conversations that you aren't, even if you don't know something about it, you'll find out something about it.
Yeah.
So to walk into an office and have someone say you want to go work payroll, I mean, I'm sure that was obviously not in your plan, but the fact that you just said, I'll with that.
Sure.
Good for you. I mean, and that is a great object lesson for anybody to step into this business, is a willingness to just try stuff.
How many people would have said, no, I'm not doing that. That's not what I came here for.
And didn't Shonda Rhimes just write a book all about her year of yes? Because she realized she was saying no to so many things that she dedicated an entire year to saying yes to everything that was offered to her. And it totally changed her whole perspective on things. Yes.
I can attest to that working. How often do I say no?
Well, Allison, we know. Yes, you do not say no.
I'm just a gal. I can't say no. I say, and because I say yes to all these crazy things. Look at all the great stuff that happens because I say yes to all these lunatic things. Yeah.
So, Rick, I'm curious, and I know we've talked about this, but I think it's interesting for people to find out any family background in the entertainment industry.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. My dad was a lyricist, composer, musical theater writer. Had to give that up when World War II broke out. He enlisted and went into the Army. My mom was a music teacher, pianist, and trio singer. She sang with Tommy Dorsey and big bands back in the day. She was actually touring Europe when Hitler invaded Poland in the late 30s. And they threw everybody onto a liner, and she had to sail home in a hurry to get back to New York. And as soon as she got back, she joined the WACs and happened to link up companies with my dad's company. He was working in intelligence for MacArthur in the Pacific. And they fell in love and got married. And Dean and I went back there and shot a documentary right in the spot where they used to go picnicking.
Really? Wait, how did you and Dean meet?
Yeah. How come you guys are hanging out?
On the Little House.
Yeah, we got a Little House.
Have you stayed friends the whole time?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, there was a window of time there afterwards where I didn't see you for a few years, but we got together again. We met together again after, I guess, over documentaries is really what brought us back together again.
Right. I was meeting up with some Marine Corps people who were organizing the trip to Vietnam for a documentary that I wanted. And Dean had just gotten back from Vietnam working with them. And they said, oh, do you know Dean Butler? And I said, hell yeah. And so we got back in touch and we did that whole series together and kept going.
Yeah. No, we've had a lot of fun doing this thing. I think that's a wonderful story about your parents. And Rick's not going to get a chance to demonstrate his musicality here unless he can whip out his guitar from on the other side of the desk. But Rick has a love of music. And see, I don't think I had heard this story about your father and music. For some reason, I had the sense that your father was an actor, but that's another Okie. music, both of your parents, and you are so musical, and you've given your children that love of music. Rick is a great guy to hang out with because you're always going to end up singing and listening to great songs, and it's just always going to be a good time.
I almost left out the most television related part of the story.
Okay.
My mom was because she had worked in the wax and she could do stenotype and she could type 120 words a minute. When she came back to California after the war, she started working as a personal assistant and secretary. And when William Paley moved west to oversee the opening of Television City, he'd been headquartered in New York, but he came out to LA for a few years. And she got recommended to go to work for him. This is the founder of CBS. And so she was his secretary for 4 or 5 years. And when he was ready to go back to New York, he wanted to move our whole family back there just so that he could keep her. And she said no. She didn't want to uproot the family. And he said, well, will you at least stay with the company? And there's somebody I know who's looking for a secretary. It was Red Skelton.
Oh.
And she worked for Red Skelton for almost 20 years. So I was a stage brat at CBS when I was a kid. I would hop in the bus after school and ride down to Beverly and Fairfax and watch them tape the show every Tuesday afternoon.
Oh my God.
Goes back a long way.
Yeah, no, it does. Boy, there's a connection there to our colleague Kent McCrae too, who worked with Red Skelton, which is sort of an interesting thing. But listen, so for our audience, what does a network programming executive do? Let me take us to that, and we'll take a break. But let's just whet our appetite around what a network programming executive does.
You bet. Right away, or do you want to
right now? Right now.
Oh, good. Yeah. The network has to be responsible for communication flowing both ways between the production company, creatively, financially, in terms of casting suggestions, in terms of programming events coming up like sweeps and preemptions and sports events that might change the schedule, picking which shows get rerun at the end of the year, all of that sort of communication. And most of the time it's very collaborative. In the case of Little House, Michael had such a firm vision of what the show should be and how it should work that I was really a glorified messenger boy. You know,
Fascinating. Wow.
I would, and Fred Silverman had just when I got to NBC, Fred Silverman had just moved over from ABC to NBC, and he was the king of the TV Guide logline. He wanted to know in one sentence what every episode was about. He wanted to have stunts for the sweeps and big events that he could promote, which, if you know Little House, wasn't really our vibe. But I had to go over to Michael and say, don't shoot me, I'm only the messenger. Here's what they're looking for. And he would give me that sort of slight head shake and smile and roll his eyes and say, let me get back to you. And sure enough, every single time he would call them and go, okay, Laura's going to have a baby. We're going to burn a house down and kill a regular. He would always deliver the goods, as requested, but in his own way. Never tell them what to do and tell them what they were hoping, for in terms of visibility, what their needs. It just needs both ways.
Yeah.
So.
No, well, we're going to talk more about that. Pamela, take us to a little break here.
Yes.
Okay, after this message from visitsymivalley.com, we'll go into the writer's room with Rick Okie.
When you visit Simi Valley, California, you're stepping into the pages of history. Go from the pioneers to the presidents. Explore beautiful wildflowers, hike through iconic Hollywood locations, and end your day aboard the actual Air Force One at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library and Museum. Throughout the summer, take the Little House 50th Anniversary Tour at Big Sky Movie Ranch. Less than 15 minutes from Los Angeles and 30 minutes from Universal Studios, Simi Valley has small-town charm with big-time history. Go to visitsymivalley.com for more information. We are so grateful to visitsymivalley.com for their commitment to presenting the Little House 50th Anniversary podcast.
Okay, we're back with writer, producer, and showrunner, and, cool guy, general, like, oh my God, this guy is so freaking cool guy. Rick Okie.
It's true.
Let's talk about going into the writer's room with Michael Landon. I am fascinated by this. What was your job? You weren't writing on Little House, were you?
No, not. I wrote on Highway to Heaven. But
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay, so you had a lot of time with Michael Landon.
Yeah. Mike always worked with a pretty small staff. I think that went back to Bonanza days. He wrote a lot of the episodes himself, so he didn't need a giant team of people to fill up the rest of the dance card. Stories were all done collaboratively. Everybody would gather in a room and sort of, because that's the hardest part of it all, frankly. Writing the dialogue is easier than cracking the story. And it's kind of amazing. I'll just tell you one story. This is actually a Highway to Heaven story, but it's a good one. I was in there working out a story with him and Dan Gordon, who was the story editor on that show. And we were working our way through it, and we hit a wall. And I don't know, my tendency is I don't like to let the room go silent. I feel like I'm not carrying my weight if I don't pitch ideas. And I start to open my mouth to say something, and Dan's hand comes over and sort of pushes me back on my chest. Because Michael is sitting back in his chair with his eyes closed, probably 5 minutes. You're just sitting here waiting. And then he sits up and he says, when I was a little kid, my parents made me take swimming lessons. And he tells this story out of his own childhood about learning how to swim and diving into the pool and, getting it over his head and whatever it was. And by the time he was finished, he had wrapped that story from his own past into the moment that we were talking about in the story, and it cracked the story wide open, and the rest was easy to do. And it was just, I'd never seen anybody just go inside quietly, find that thing, bring it out, and then everything else fell into place. And that's Michael in a nutshell, story-wise. He's probably the best I ever saw that way. The stories were relatively simple, but left plenty of room for character complexity and unexpected things happening, which was, what more can you ask?
I think that's exactly the perfect description of what he did, right? Like, he wasn't doing brains. The stories were simple, but the depth of the characters and the relationship were so wildly rich.
And they were all personal to him. I mean, this was something I always said. I said, it's almost like he's doing his own personal therapy through this show, because he's using all this stuff from his life, some of it very painful stuff from his life, and it's all working its way into these plot lines and these characters, and characters are getting named for people he knew. And he talked about the whole Percival and Nellie thing. Well, it was my parents, blah, 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 blah. And he was using all this stuff. It was like method acting, but writing plots for TV show. And that's, I think, why people have latched onto it so emotionally, because it is coming directly from someone's deepest dark place.
So on Little House, you were that self-described middleman then, but on Highway, but then you were a writer on Highway to Heaven.
Yes. When I told him I was going to be leaving, I had decided that all the fun was on the production side and the writing side, and I didn't want to be a suit for the network. He was totally sympathetic and really helpful, and he started giving me hints and tips and suggestions and places to start, and it was just great. I felt like I had such a leg up, and when I left, I called him up and I said, "Okay, I'm making the break," and he said, "Well, come on in and we'll give you an assignment."
Unbelievable.
So it was one of my very first writing jobs was for him. So
how many years were you on Little House?
I was the suit from 78 to 81.
You were the suit.
Right? The suit. That's what you call it.
Yeah.
And then,
Absolutely.
And then Highway was, I guess I probably wrote that in 82. And I was also writing for Knight Rider, the talking car.
Oh my gosh.
And they put me on staff. So yes, Hasselhoff.
Oh my God.
Part of my job was going to wake David up at his place and make sure he made his call time.
Talk about different energies on a show. That's you, that you could move there, that you could be in the heart of Michael telling these very intimate personal stories, and you could write all the, I don't know, you could write for Kit the talking car and get David to set on time and be okay with that.
The best part of that was that Bill Daniels took the talking car absolutely seriously.
Yes,
and
yes.
He would come to the dub stage to read his lines, and he would literally be like talking about the car's motivation and things like that.
But that's why it worked.
Consummate actor.
That is why it worked.
Yes.
I just have to ask you, Allison and I have told these stories. Now, Pamela never had the pleasure, the sort of the fascination of meeting Michael for the first time. What was your take when you first met Michael? I mean, we have very specific take. What was your take on Michael the first time you met him?
Oh, golly. Probably like, I think, it was not a shooting day. So it was not Charles Ingalls, it was some very expensive clothes. It was gray-haired Michael, not dyed hair Michael.
Yeah.
And he was sort of sizing me up and grilling me a little bit. I guess my predecessor in the job had not been someone he got along terribly well with. Yeah. And so he was trying to get a read on me, but we just hit it off personally, and it's intimidating. I mean, he's so charismatic, and he's little Joe, he's Charles Ingalls, he's that guy, and and here he is sitting right here, and force of nature personality.
Right. Well, that's what I was going to ask about, because he was so different than so many people. I mean, you're coming as a network person, but here is a person who is writing and directing and creating and doing all of this. He's not just, hey, we got to wake you up and get you to the set. He's like, I'm there, I'm doing everything, and I'm so into it that I'm writing the show, and very independent, buck the system, buck the trends. Like you said, the last guy who had your job, it was like you again. So it was like, do I like the network? Do I not like the network? Are they going to try to stifle me in some way creatively? So how do you handle that? Because that's completely different than people you would normally get.
I think I told him right up front. I was pretty new at the job too, and I said, "Look, you know this a lot better than I do, and yet I still have to answer to the people over in Burbank. So, you help me out to do that, and I will make them as invisible as possible and unintrusive as possible to you." And that's the deal we struck, and that worked for both of us.
Yeah, that's a good deal. That'd be a hit.
He was pretty much guaranteed employment for me because I got a good review right away. He called my boss and said, "This is going to work out fine." And at that point, I was bulletproof at NBC. I could stay as long as I wanted.
Holy crap!
So I was the designated Michael Wrangler.
I'd say you were the Michael Whisperer, weren't you? You were the one who could talk.
But to what Allison was saying, he also would say things to me like, he said, the hardest two words for any writer, screenwriter to write are fade in. He said, just starting the job, just starting the work is the most important thing you can do. And he said, the next two hardest to write are the end. Finishing your first thing makes you a writer. And once you're a writer, you're a writer. And it doesn't matter whether you sell what you write or it gets produced, you've done it, you keep doing it. That was really, really helpful. And he also said, he sort of took me by the neck one day and he said, learn how to write, learn how to direct, learn how to cut, and you will always work in this town. Those were the three skills that he thought were most valuable. And he also never, ever lost touch with the audience. When we would go into the sound studio to mix an episode, and the guys are working the giant multi-track, studio gear and listening to the show through huge speakers. And Mike would always have a little portable with a 2-inch speaker sitting up there. And they would run the playback through that because he said that's what mom and pop are listening to at home. And it doesn't matter how good it sounds in here. It matters how good it sounds on that.
Oh my
TV
God.
set. And that's what he used for his playback.
Wow.
I could listen to this all day long.
Who does that?
Oh my gosh.
No,
amazing.
Yeah. No. So you had fundamentally really good experiences with Michael. I mean, what was the best experience for you? I mean, what and you've already said it, but what was that best experience?
Oh boy. Well, becoming friends, later in life when He had separated from his wife and was dating Cindy.
Yeah.
My girlfriend at the time and Cindy became friends. I brought her to a rap party one time, and the two of them hit it off. And I can't remember the occasion. Dean, you might have been there, but there was sort of a Magic Mountain night I don't know if it was an NBC night or a Little House night. But we all ended up going to that together and riding roller coasters and just doing normal stuff. It was sort of almost like a double date. And it was that I owe that all to Debbie, my ex-girlfriend, because she was able to connect with Cindy in that way. And I think, a lot of the people around the show were dubious of her because they had been friends with Lynn. It was Lynn, right?
Yeah, of course.
They didn't want to be in the middle of that, but we were sort of fresh to the whole thing. And also same thing. I think she came on a location trip up to Sonora with me one time when we went up to shoot up there. So we could go out to dinner at the end of the day. And those personal moments were just great. But he was also not afraid to sort of hang me out to dry every now and then. I remember one time when I came over to deliver some message from the network, and Kent was in a bad mood that day. And I stopped into his office ahead of time to tell him.
Rick is talking about Kent McCrae, ladies and gentlemen, who was our Michael's secret weapon, who we're going to talk about next. But yes, go ahead.
This should be good.
He was indeed a secret weapon, and he went off at me. He was furious that I was going to come over there and tell Michael what to do about the show. And he wasn't really mad at me. I think he was just mad at the network and mad at the world that particular day. Yeah. But I'm just shrinking in my chair. I'm going like this, trying to get smaller and smaller. And I see his eyes moving up, and I turn around, and Mike's standing in the doorway, listening to him, just killing me and grinning and just sort of leaving me out there to take all this abuse, And finally he says, it's like, down boy, to Kent, Okay, it's okay. And stuff like that. Little stuff, playing cards on the set, just not the stuff you expect,
How often were you on the set?
Tried to get there at least once or twice a week.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say you were a regular fixture. Yes, not a daily person, but you were constantly around. I think we can't, for our audience, and we talk about Kent McCrae, but people don't really. It's hard to explain, for us perhaps to explain the genius of this guy and his ability to translate what Michael was trying to do logistically. Kent's genius, I think, and maybe you have something else, but scheduling and hiring was a huge pice of Kent's skill set, and his total knowledge of what was being done was enormous. When you look at that partnership, what do you see?
Absolutely true. And I think they had a leg up because of their experience together on Bonanza. I think that, they had a core group of people, Voigtlander and people like that, and David Rose, and, in all different areas, that as many people as they could import from the Bonanza experience to the Little House experience, they could. And it was great because both shows were religious about authenticity. The prop guys, as Dean Wilson, was he the prop guy?
Dean was the early on. Yeah. And Ronnie
would go scouring swap meets all weekend looking to buy, period mason jars to put on the shelves because it was so important to them that the actors be able to step into this authentic world. And the more authentic it was, the easier it was for them to do their job.
Of course.
So that aesthetic went, from top to bottom. And, then it was also just like Dean was saying, scheduling and budgeting. If there were a guest star that you really wanted to go after and you had to move things around to accommodate that person's schedule, then they would make it happen, Whether it was Ray Bolger or Johnny Cash or whoever was busy.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to interject real quick. You said something before about being in the writer's room with Michael. I just been thinking of it. So you were saying that you'd be in the writer's room and there would be other writers. Sorry, my perception is that when Michael wrote his episodes, it was just him on that yellow notepad. But you're saying there were other writers in the room that helped collaborate in terms of the story arc, or was it all really Michael?
we talk about the difference between cracking the story and writing the story. I mean, I think they're
right,
because we saw him cranking that stuff out on the yellow legal pad all the time and saying, "Oh, I'm almost done. I'm almost done." I go, "How does that come from that and then get to the other?"
Yeah. So who was in the room?
He was unto himself when it came to what he was writing.
Yeah.
He didn't want any help or any interference. He just, like Allison was saying, pull out the yellow legal pad and wrote them all longhand, which is just still mind blowing.
I know.
Left-handed, like this. It was all
there's something about. There's a great book called Thinking Fast and Slow that talks about the way our brains work differently. When we think is at one speed. When we speak, it's at a slightly slower speed. When we read, it's at a slightly slower than that. And when we write, it's the slowest of the four. And each one of them pulls a different part of us. Mm-hmm. And that really, really worked for him. But if one of the writers was working on something, he wanted, of course, to know what your story was going to be to try to help you avoid any pitfalls or sidestep anything that had either already been done or that might be in the plans and for the future, or just making sure that it felt right for the show. So in those meetings, you could have one or two writers and Michael working on the story. And you would take notes in that and sort of, you might put it together on 3x5 cards. Everybody had their own way of doing it. You might go back to and type it out. I don't think we had word processors on that show.
Yeah.
Just type it out so that you could run it by each other on paper one more time and make sure that you didn't forget anything or some great new idea didn't happen in the meantime. And then once that got approved, then you were off to write the teleplay, and that's how that worked. And if you got stuck, you could always wander into the next writer's room and go, what do I do about this?
Yeah.
And typically, if somebody's a little bit further away from the process than you, they can see sometimes their way out of the maze in a way that you can't. So,
was there a designated amount of episodes that Michael knew he was doing every season? Or because it doesn't seem like there are that many other writers on the show. I mean, every now and then you have a different writer, but it was...
certainly the premiere and the finale every year, and probably a couple for the November sweeps and a couple for the February sweeps.
Yeah.
What's that? It's about a total of 6 or 8 there.
Yeah.
The staff when I came aboard was Don Ballack and Chris Abbott.
Oh yeah.
And John Dugan. So there were 3 to divide up what was left.
Right. And you see Dugan's name all the time. He wrote some great ones. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But Michael would step in. I mean, he would step into stuff because even if the script had been written and we were shooting it, he'd say, I have an idea. And new scenes would happen and new things would happen and stuff would get changed because he felt like it.
So he had a hand in every episode, even if he wasn't the primary writer of the episode. Yes. Yeah.
He rewrote everything. I mean, there was no script, I don't think, that had his touch on it. He would... a word here, a scene there, or whatever. He had his touch on every script.
And nothing he wrote ever got rewritten by anyone else.
Sure. Oh, my God.
Oh, there's a shock. Yes. That's why that's the impression we were getting.
As part of my job, here's a new Little House script. Michael wrote it. I'll see you later. I didn't get any phone calls. Nothing.
That's awesome.
I mean, it's got to be difficult because so many times you hear the stories that the networks are used to being able to dictate so many things. As you said, Fred Silverman was all about spectacle, where we had Super Train and all these crazy things. And they would dictate things, say, oh, we want this, and could we be more this, and I don't like that. I don't think that flew with Michael, that kind of level of dictation for the network. I don't think he sat still for that for a minute.
There was a business side to that too, which is that when he signed up to do Little House, he also did it with the condition that he had a pay-or-play television movie of the week every year during hiatus. They almost never got made.
I was going to say, when did that happen? Oops.
It was a pay-or-play deal, so they just stacked up. So in effect, the network had a huge commitment to him that they owed him in the event that everything ever went off the rails at Little House.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so whenever a creative difference might sort of arise, he would go, let's make one of those movies. And they would very quickly, they would step away.
Oh my God. Yeah, that would do it.
As long as he was happy, they were happy. They knew they had a really good thing.
Now, the question we get asked.
Go Go.
No, you finished that thought because I had a question about like how we could do this kind of thing now. But I mean, yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Go ahead. Yeah, Rick, is there more you want to say?
I mean, at that particular time at NBC, the only person who rivaled Michael in terms of star power was Johnny Carson.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the vibe was very similar. I mean, the Tonight Show was his thing, and he was the man, and you weren't ultimately going to win a disagreement with him.
Well, when we look at
and
Little
the two
House,
of them were friends.
And of course they were besties. They were huge besties. When we look at the chemistry of the casting of Little House and the fact the crew, I'm trying to think of anyone I met on the set who wasn't from Bonanza. The hair, the makeup, everyone would come off Bonanza. So you had this cohesive group who all knew each other intimately and could work together like a machine. You had the incredible casting, the chemistry between the actors, and then you had Michael, whose hands were in every single tiny little facet of the thing. People say, oh, could you redo Little House? Could you make a show like Little House today? I've always said, well, our problem is kind of had a lightning in a bottle thing going there. Could you do a show? Could you do Little House on the Prairie? Could you do a show like Little House on the Prairie today on television?
Sure, you could sure try. It would not be the same. It would have to be something else. It would have to have a life of its own that made it worth having. If you tried to imitate that mold, you would fail.
Well, like as Melissa Anderson said, it wouldn't work because you don't have Michael Landon, and he was the special sauce.
Yes. Yeah.
You could try, but there's no shirtless hot paw anymore now.
How did he stay so tan?
Yeah. And waxed.
It's just working out in the fields. Working in the fields. Totally. That was what.
All right. So, Allison, you asked the next question.
Well,
I want you to ask this one.
What's the one we were looking at about where does it stand? Yeah. Well, and I mean, this is the thing, and I had talked to Dean about this. I said, when we were coming into Little House, we were kind of bucking a trend. They had started to walk away, all the networks, from Westerns and country shows. I mean, Beverly Hillbillies was a big hit, and they were like, no, we can't do that anymore. And all of these shows, there were so many Westerns and so many country shows, and Green Acres, they said, we're not doing that. We've got, young people living in the city. We want to buy refrigerators and cars. We got to move this along. And so we come in with Little House on the Prairie. And yet here we are 50 years later. There were shows that were network darlings in the 70s. They won all the Emmys. They were the TV Guide cover. And here we are 50 years later, and everyone is screaming about Little House on the Prairie all day. And they're not even talking about some of these shows that were such a thing. What happened? Where do we stand? If you had a pantheon of great TV shows, where do we fit in the history of television?
Wow. That's a good question. Well, I know at the time, there were a couple of things that I learned very, very quickly when I had my suit on. There was, of course, something called the access rule at the time, which was part of the broadcasting code, which said that at least 1 hour a night should be suitable for family viewing. And on Sundays, I think Sundays especially were that way, which pretty much guaranteed the future of Disney, which was, the wonderful world of Disney on Sunday evening. That took care, as far as NBC was concerned, that took care of that requirement for them. They didn't have to ever worry about it. It was like grandfathered in. And the 8 o'clock hour had to be family friendly.
The family hour, yep.
And that really, really helped with Little House. Because, they could just do that night and then they have met their requirements. So whether Westerns were in fashion or out of fashion, we had lots of conversations about the fact that period pieces never get dated because they are already dated when you make them. They're dated, if done properly, they're already that. And the other thing was that the Nielsen ratings of the time were not all digitized and immediate the way they are now. So you don't always know exactly how you did. And the funny thing they had what they called the A and B counties, which was basically big cities. LA, New York, Philadelphia, Chicago, Dallas. And the B cities might have been St. Louis, San Francisco, slightly smaller metropolitan areas. And then C and D were rural. And you would get a set of overnight ratings on Tuesday morning and go, oh my goodness, Little House only did a 20 share. Well, that's because it was doing a 20 share in the big cities, right? Because the only ones that they did overnights on were those big cities. And I would laugh and say, wait till the Nationals come in. And sure enough, Little House would come in at a 37 or something, because every single household that wasn't in the city, in the country, was watching Little House on the Prairie. Mm-hmm. So, it was the cumulative, weight of the audience was always there. It just might not be located where, concentrated in the big cities. So,
wow, those city folk don't know what they were missing.
Well, I think they do now. I think they got
Clearly.
I think, and their kids and their kids' kids. Yes,
well, there was an attitude. Sure. It wasn't cool at the time. I mean, the number of people I met who said, I never watch a show. And 5 minutes later, they're going, the one with the raccoon. And so people would literally lie to me about watching Little House, where they would lie and say they didn't watch it.
I mean, there is a prairie closet for sure. Because it's, let's face it, it's not necessarily considered cool now either. But, we got to be loud and proud about it. Yeah, it's never been cool.
Never been cool. I think that's one of the beautiful things about it, is it is not subject to the whims of fashion and cultural mores and what's hip and happening right now. People come to it and find it and love it because it's a separation from that. It's a respite from that. As we've talked about, three of us so many times, it's the safe place.
Yeah, it is a safe space.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you guys have had the experience of being with someone maybe that you don't know very well, or that you just met, or for whatever reason, you mention Little House and people light up. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They go, oh, and I worked on a lot of series, and I can run those names and I get a lot of blank stares.
Yeah.
But when I mentioned Little House, it's like they're friendly, they're safe, they're comfortable, they're home.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And I think it's also relating to another person, like, oh my God, you watched it too? Because it's like underground. It's like secretive. People aren't like running out going, hey, buddy, at the water cooler, like, did you check out, Sylvia last night? They're not doing that.
And they also think it's the realism. There's this weird thing of people thinking it's real. There's people who will watch other TV shows and they know it's a TV show and that these are actors. And they will say some special effect. They go, oh no, I don't believe that actually happened in real life. That was a TV show. But I mean, the number of people I get still on Facebook. Now, the bell on the church is that, but I'm like, the bell's not real. The ringing would have been too loud. Of course, it's not a real bell. Why would it be a real bell? And the number of things, they can barely believe we used fake snow because in their world, it's real. It's not a TV show.
Yeah, I know. When I learned about the bell, that just broke my heart. Anyway. We are rapidly approaching time. So Rick, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. I could literally sit here for hours and listen to everything you have to say and watch your adorable little kitty in the background.
I love the cat.
And on your shoulder, having the time of their life.
Yeah, Rick, thank you
very much.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rick. I interrupted you.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Love being here. Do it anytime.
Well, we got so wrapped up in Little House, we didn't talk about all the other work that you've done.
I know.
I think that your appreciation for Little House, I think is, and having known you for so many years, I know how you've appreciated Little House, and it's informed by so much of the other work that you've done, so many other places and different genres. And, it's just, it does hold it. You can work in any genre, but there's something special about this coming home to family that Little House has. And I know that's an important value in your life. And so it all sort of speaks.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm going to ask one more question. Do you think your time on Little House sort of set you up for the rest of your career? Do you think that had a huge impact?
I definitely do. I think the sort of collaborative way that I always worked with staffs was all, it all came out of that. And Michael wasn't the only person who did things that way too, but he was the first that I knew. Yeah. And, the idea that ultimately it's not so important whose name is on it. It's how does it come out at the end of the day? Is it great? Are we all proud of it? That aesthetic, as well as lots of, when you watch somebody work so well and so smoothly, you can't help but be taking notes in your head and going, I'm going to remember this because someday this is going to come in really handy. Even to that, go back to your own personal life and find some piece of your own heart memory that you can bring to bear and get onto the page. Don't think with your head, think with your heart.
Thank you, Rick. That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
That was very Little House on the Prairie.
Yeah. I mean, speechless. Speechless.
It was incredible.
That was so prairie. Okay. All right, everyone.
Awesome.
That's a wrap for today. Thank you so much again for joining us. We are on Patreon. Go find us for lots of fun extras. Visit us on our socials, Little House 50 Podcast, littlehouse50podcast.com. And Bob, get the wig. Let's fly, everybody. Thanks.
Rick, Rick's talking.
We're doing the airplane arm.